God, you are my peace. Peace is what you are. God, you are my love. Love is what you are. God, you are my joy. Joy is what you are. My joy, my peace, my love. My joy, my peace, my love. God, you are my joy. Joy is what you are. Yeah. God, you are my peace. Oh, peace is what you are. God, you are my love. Oh, love is what you are. God, you are my joy. Joy is what you are. My joy, my peace, my love. My joy, my peace, my love. God, you are my strength. Strength is what you are. God, you are my help. Oh, help is what you are. And God, you are my life. And life is what you are. God, you are my joy. And joy is what you are. You are my joy, my peace, my love. 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 God, you are my joy. Oh, yeah, yeah. Na, 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 na. God, you are. Oh, you are. You are, you are. God, you are my joy. Joy is what you are. God, you are my peace. Peace is what you are. God, you are my love. Love is what you are. God, you are my joy. Joy is what you are. My joy, my peace, my love. My joy, my peace.
Hello, beautiful people. It is so very good to be here with you. It is so wonderful to gather together for the Put Down Your Bible Truth Study. I'm happy to be here with you. And of course, we're going to begin, as we always do, with a word of prayer. So I invite you right here and right now, wherever you may be, to just stop what you're doing. And let's take a collective breath in. As you close your eyes, we breathe in and we breathe out. Again, I invite you to take a conscious breath in and a conscious breath out. We breathe in and we breathe out. There is only one mind, one power, one presence, working in all, through all, and as all. There is one life. That life is Mother, Father, God. That life is spirit. That life is consciousness. That life is the ground of all being. That life is the thing that is back of, behind, and underneath all things. That life is the substance behind all existence. And it is my life now. And it is your life now. For what I know to be true is that the presence and power that I call Mother, Father, God, the presence and power that I call spirit, the presence and power that I call consciousness, neither comes nor goes. It pervades all life. It is everywhere and everything. It is constantly encountered. It neither comes nor goes. That means that there is no spot where the divine is not. There is no spot where holiness is not. There is no spot where wisdom is not. There is no spot where intelligence is not. There is no spot where harmony is not. There is no spot where unity is not. There is no spot where love is not. There is no spot where healing is not. There is no spot where peace or freedom or joy or good is not. All of this and so much more is right here and right now. And we take a collective breath in, breathing in that reality, normalizing that reality in our mind now. And as we normalize the reality that this life is, and it is here and now, that where we sit is the seat of divine, that the space that we're in is filled and overflowing with holiness. We remember and know that we are one with God and one of God. We are one with God. We are one with God. We are one with God. We are God's good idea. We are unique, individualized, particularized, yet remaining undivided expressions of the divine. So that means we are holy. That means that we are powerful. That means that we are worthy. That means that we are sacred. That means that, as A Course in Miracles writes, we remain as God created us, changeless beings in an ever-changing time-space reality. And so as we put our minds on the changeless that is and the changeless that we are, I now speak this word of truth and this word of faith as we open our hearts and our minds to receive, as we open our hearts and our minds to expand, as we open our hearts and our minds to be enlightened and enlivened. We open our hearts and our minds to the words of truth. We open our hearts and our minds to deep insight. We open our hearts and our minds to revelation. We open our hearts and our minds to liberation and transformation. It must be, it must be, it must be. And so from this place of awareness, from this place of declaration, from this place of absolute knowing, I release the prayer. I release it back into the law, which is always in operation, responding and becoming according to the pattern of thought that we provide. This pattern of thought is life-giving, life-supporting, healing, constructive, and beneficial. So it must be. So from this place of awareness, we lift up our voices and we say, Amen, Ashe. And so it is. And so it is. Yes, yes. Well, again, hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Put Down Your Bible, Reimagine the Bible Truth Study. It is wonderful to be here with you, and it's wonderful to have you here with us. If you are a first-time guest and you're joining us for the very first time, we would love to stay in touch with you. And so the information you see here on your screen is how you can do that. This is how you access your digital connection card. Just text the keyword CONNECT to that phone number, 347-472 1078. You'll receive a link to the digital connection card. Click that link, enter your information. We just need your name and your email address, and then you submit that and you're all set. You'll receive a follow-up text that says you're all set. If for some reason you're unable to text that phone number, you'll see here in the description, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, you will see that there's the link there for you to access that information. Also, I want to encourage you to support this live stream through your giving. This is something that is new in 2026 and something that I've only committed to through for this first quarter of 2026. And so your support, your financial support of this particular live stream is what we will be taking into consideration as we think about if we will continue this and how we will continue this in the months ahead. And so to give to CSC, it's very easy. You can go to our website, celebration.sc.org/give. You can go to text to give, 347-744-9500. There is a $10 minimum for text to give. And you can download the Church Center app and give via the app. Google Pay and Apple Pay are available via the app. But again, we appreciate each and every one of you. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your support of CSC. So the first thing is, we'd love to just hear from you all. Shout yourselves out. Let us know where you're connecting in from. It's also always wonderful to see that. And of course, please, you can pop in your questions and share your questions that you may have. We've been moving through some powerful things in this month and really in this half of the lessons, as I have said throughout the weeks, that lessons 1 through 6 are about your inner realization. Lessons 1 through 6 are about your God realization, about yourself, capital S, self realization. And it is out of that knowing, it is out of that realization that then we can move to start to apply that to the external world. And so that's what lessons 7 through 12 are really all about. And this month, in the past 2 weeks, we have looked at some powerful things, right? We looked at lesson 9, harmony, and lesson 10, choose heaven. And lesson 9, harmony, that word is a bit deceptive because what's actually happening and what lesson 9 is really about is the releasing of condemnation. And in releasing condemnation, that's how you get to harmony. It's the releasing of a belief in sin and acceptance of sin as reality. And it is a releasing of condemnation of self and then condemnation of others. Because as long as there is any type of condemnation, even if you feel justified, if there's any type of condemnation, then what you have created is a scenario where inevitably you are also condemned. One, because in truth, we're all one, but also you can find that the ways in which you may be condemning some outside of you, that may reflect some of your negative self-talk, that may have reflect some of the ways that you were treated or talked about or talked to. And so we have to release that if indeed we want to experience harmony in our world. And so Emma Curtis Hopkins in the text Scientific Christian Mental Practice gives us a very easy to remember and to use one sentence spiritual mind treatment, right? I do not accuse the world or myself of sin. All is well. And so that's very, very powerful. And you can use that on a daily basis. You can use that to cancel out when you find yourself moving into condemnation, when you find yourself moving into judgment. Because of course we recognize, as I shared in that sermon, Go and Sin No More, Jesus as the personification of truth, in that story of the woman who was caught in the act of adultery, the woman and the man, the story should say, that were caught in the act of adultery when there were no accusers. Of course, the truth says, no more do I. Go and sin no more. Go and accuse yourself and others no more. So again, if you have questions, please pop those in because I'm here to support you and I want to answer those questions. There's 2 things that I want to highlight in this session from scientific Christian mental practice, related to lesson 10, right? Related to choose heaven. Two, I think, key and critical points that Emma Curtis Hopkins writes about in the text that I think is very helpful for your understanding, right? So let me just pull that up. Pull this up so I can see it. All right, boom, boom, boom. Just gotta move some windows around here. Okay, here we go. So here's one thing, and I'm sure some of you had this thought or had this question as you listened to the sermon on Sunday. This idea of choosing heaven, right? It's about choosing the side of that which you want to see and experience. And there's the recognition that you do actually have a choice. So we talked a lot about that on Sunday, the understanding about your awareness and freedom, right? That actually your awareness determines your freedom. And as you expand your awareness, lessons 1 through 6, right? Then you expand your experience of freedom. And that is then when you really begin to understand the truth that you actually do have choice, right? That you may think that you're only seeing things one way because this is what it is. But as you expand your inner awareness, your self-realization, self, capital S, self of the God in you, as you and through you, you find that you have more choice than you may have previously realized in your previous awareness. And so Emma Curtis Hopkins, she writes, and I just wanted to read this last sentence at the bottom of the page. The fact is, you have to choose faith, the first thing. Your first words determine your future, right? And that's very powerful, right? This is the truth of what choosing heaven is about, that you may be presented with an unwanted experience. You may be presented with some unwanted information. You may be presented with something you just do not like. You may be presented with something that is painful. You may be presented with something that has you wanting to cuss somebody out. And the fact is, you have to choose faith, the first thing. Your first words determine your future. And so the first words then it's what you're choosing. How you're choosing to speak about this thing, how you're choosing to think about this thing determines your future, because that's what will outpicture based on the things that you're saying or not saying. And so here's the supportive point that I want to get to, and the clarifying thing here, which is interesting. She writes, but you say, I had my house burned down. My husband at the point of death. My 2 boys ran away. My money is all gone. My acquaintances deserted me. It is not possible to say that I believe this all good. Here is where you are mistaken. So let's hear that, right? Because this is something that comes up, and this is one of the reasons why some people misinterpret metaphysical approach to life and the New Thought philosophy as Pollyanna, pie in the sky, putting your head in the sand, just positive, positive, positive. And it's not what it is, right? I did a sermon some years ago. There's a difference between positive thinking and positive knowing. And so the goal is for you to be a positive knower, because that which you know is firm, it is unshakable. That which you know, that's what your faith is speaking from and acting from, right? You're not just thinking positive thoughts, you're knowing truth, right? And so that's who we are and who we're really becoming. But she says, here is where you are mistaken. This is where so many make their mistake. The science of spirit, the science of truth does not say death is good. It says there is no death. Remember our denials, the universal denials? In my idea of good, there is no sin, sickness, or death, right? This is, again, related to, as many of you, we used it in that, I think, for the title of that sermon, right? A Course in Miracles, right? The idea that the peace of God is rooted in the reality of what is real versus what is unreal, right? Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Nothing unreal exists, right? It may be a temporary experience. And I'll bring us back to this. When we say it doesn't exist, it's in the same way that we would say a shadow doesn't exist. It exists, but it doesn't exist, right? It doesn't have life. It was not born. It cannot recreate itself, right? It doesn't exist. You remove the light and it doesn't exist anymore, right? It has no life of its own. It has no life of itself. Yes, it's an experience, but it doesn't exist. I also use the example of the different states of consciousness. You're waking, you're sleeping, you're dreaming, and then beyond the dreaming state is the transcendent state. And we recognize that a dream can be a very real experience, a good dream or a nightmare. It exists, but it doesn't exist, right? When you wake up, that thing doesn't exist. And again, it doesn't have a life of its own. It doesn't live and die. It can't create, right? And propagate itself, right? So here's where many are mistaken. Because how could you call your house being burned down and your husband almost dying good? How would someone call my two boys ran away a good thing? How would someone call all my money is gone, right? That's not a good thing. The science says there is no death. The science does not say the deserters are good. It says there is no such thing as desertion. The science does not say poverty is good. It says there is no poverty. The science does not say the changing ugly conditions are good. It says there is only good. And she quotes scripture, "Look not toward the earth, look unto me." So then this is what choosing heaven is about. So at no point would I ever encourage you to look at the state of your world and your affairs to the extent that they're unwanted or ugly conditions, and using the words that Emma Curtis Hopkins uses here. And at no point would I invite you to look at the current state of the world and say what's happening in Iran is good, and say what is happening in the United States in general is good, right? No, of course not, right? But what the metaphysician understands is that all of these things are shadows. All of these things are dreams that we can be awakened from, right? And actually, to go back to what I shared with the states of consciousness, the waking, sleeping, dreaming, transcendent. The goal is not to come back to the waking state, right? Oftentimes we have this metaphor that's used of like, we just need to wake up, right? But the transcendent state is the reality state. And so actually what we know and understand is that as we access that transcendent state, we can bring that awareness into our waking state. So being awake is not enough. Most people, everybody's, you're watching me now, you're awake. But are you awake and rooted in an awareness of the transcendent, where there is harmony, where there is ease, where there is peace, where all is well? And so the goal is to bring that all is well into our waking state, to then experience what some would call heaven on earth, right? Because it's absolutely possible. Right? Not the mythological heaven of streets paved with gold and a mansion in the sky, but a reality that we read about in the powerful poetry in the book of Isaiah, right? Where we read about this idea that the goal is the lion lays down with the lamb, right? The goal is we turn our pruning hooks, our swords into pruning hooks, right? And plowshares, right? That we work together in symbiosis and harmony, and those that seemingly were opposed to one another are in arm with each other in a beautiful way, right? Working with each other, right? And that's the opportunity. But the only way to get that is to remember that what we are seeing, as real as the experience is, and if you've ever had a nightmare, shout out, yes, if you ever had a nightmare, right? You can wake up out of that nightmare in a sweat. Sometimes it's hard to go back to sleep because you're like, it just still feels real. You're trying to shake that experience, right? We know that all of that is real. And yet at some point you come to the reality of it was a dream, right? And this is what we are invited to do first in our own lives. I must say that again. I've said that, and I said I would say it many times in the sermon series, but it's important, right? The only way to truly understand this and apply it to the larger world is you must fully understand and apply it to your world. You have plenty to work on. And I don't mean work on in the sense of improve. I mean, you have plenty of things in your life, things to address, things to transform. You may want to transform things that are calling for your attention. Each and every one of us, as surely as we are humans and on this planet, right? We have opportunities to apply these teachings to our world, our individual world, and our individual affairs. And as we do that, and as we continue to be courageous enough to do that, and as we continue to willingly do that, it expands our understanding, again, our awareness, and it expands our freedom. And then we start to see the play of the shadows out in the larger world. We start to understand it. We can understand how the collective human consciousness, we see the parallel between our maybe previous consciousness around a certain subject or around a certain topic as it relates to our lives. So look not toward the earth, look unto me. So the opportunity is not to call this terrible, unwanted thing, whatever it may be in your life. When I'm inviting you to choose heaven, I'm not saying, this diagnosis, be like, oh, I'm in heaven because I just got this unwanted diagnosis, right? The doctor told me I only have a few days to live. This is good. No. That's not the teaching. That's a misuse of the teaching. It's a misunderstanding first of the teaching and then a misuse, right? And unfortunately, many people have done that. It's not what the teaching is saying. Now, the teaching is inviting you to do something even more daring with an understanding, right? So to the extent that this feels like a leap, all good. That means that lessons 1 and 2, right? I just want to pop that back up because I think it's so important. But lesson 1 and 2, it's like, okay, well, right. This is my opportunity I need to live in the universal denials, right? In my idea of good, there is no evil. In my idea of good, there is no matter. In my idea of good, there is no absence of life, substance, or intelligence. In my idea of good, there is nothing to hate. And then you follow it with the universal affirmations. My good is my God. My God is life, truth, substance, intelligence. Those things are omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. In God I live, move, and have my being. I am spirit, I am mind, I am wisdom, I am truth, I am wholeness. My understanding makes my world according to itself. I govern my world by my understanding of good without sin, sickness, or death. And I pointed out that last affirmation is very important now as we think about choosing heaven. Because one of the things, unfortunately, that happens that keeps us and so many people from choosing heaven is the belief in mixtures. And again, I talked about this on Sunday. The belief in, oh, well, my life is pretty good. I take the good with the bad. That's a phrase that people use, unfortunately, right? And so the affirmation is this idea that good is without sin, sickness, or death, right? You don't need to have something to sort of keep you humble. That's another way people talk about it, right? This keeps you humble. Shout out, I don't know how many of you all are basketball fans, but shout out to Bam Adebayo, who made history last night. It was really cool to watch. Scored 83 points. It's now the second most points ever of an NBA player, right? In a game, right? Powerful. Still, Wilt Chamberlain holds the record of 100 points. One of the things that was interesting to me that I read today was that, he was raised in the South, raised by a single mom. They lived in a trailer, according to the story. And I read today that it says that he keeps a picture of I don't know if it's his home or something that reminds him of his small beginnings. He keeps that in his locker so that he sees it and that reminds him of where he came from. Now, of course, I understand that. I understand why he's doing that. But if I were his pastor, if I was counseling him, if I was his coach, right, mentor or advisor, I would encourage him to remove that photo and put it in a scrapbook or something, right? Because unfortunately, what it is doing, right, it's that idea of, oh, this keeps me humble. Right? Oh, yes, I'm incredibly successful. Oh, I'm an all-star. Oh, I've reached, all of these different records and accolades. Oh, I'm a gold medalist. Oh, I've been to the NBA finals twice. Oh, my life looks really good. But I need to have this to keep me humble, to remember where it came from. And unfortunately, the other thing that is doing is it's a past focused way of living, right? And actually the goal of life is to live forward. I don't know if you ever considered that, but that's the goal of life, to live forward, right? Because yes, it is wonderful. And there are, in the field of positive psychology, there's something called having a past positive focus, right? Sometimes we have to learn how to reframe our past so that we see it differently, so that it is no longer something that we're constantly thinking about and wishing it had been different or wishing it had been better, right? So that's very important. But the idea is that it's settled, right? We have a past positive focus, so that is settled, and now we can live forward. But when we have something that's constantly putting us to the past, particularly from this perspective of trying to keep you humble, it is a misuse of the focus of your attention, right? And so we recognize that, unfortunately, this is how so many of us have been taught to live, and that's a mixture, right? That's a mixture. That's a mixture. And we do not believe in mixtures. Right? I do not believe in some good and some bad. I do not believe in needing to be humbled in order to appreciate the good that is in my life, right? Because my idea of good, of course, is without sin, without sickness or death. None of it is required. And I recognize that my world is created according to my understanding. And so to the extent that my understanding is rooted and grounded in capital R reality, you don't have to worry, right? You really don't have to worry about the past, right? To kind of keep that in the center of your mind. Live forward, live forward. That's the goal. That's the goal. So that first piece was something that I wanted to make sure that we talked about tonight. And if you have any questions or thoughts or comments on that, all good. Let me know. Again, you can pop it in and we will discuss it. I want to pull up another aspect because I think this is also helpful. This is another, I would say, I guess we would consider it a potential roadblock to choosing heaven, right? What would another potential roadblock be, right? You maybe you don't have that sense of like, wait, are you asking me to call clearly not good things good? Well, here's another one, right? And this affects everyone. I'm in the second paragraph. Now, if we examine doubt a little more closely, we shall see that it is not doubt of the good at all. And that's true, right? You all believe that God, the good, is good and is able to be exceedingly and abundantly above all that you could ask or think or imagine in your wildest dreams. You believe that. I know you do, right? So that's not the issue. You don't doubt the good. You don't doubt that the good exists or that it is capable of being and expressing goodness and more good in your life and in our world collectively. She says, it is the fear that the good won't work now. uh-oh, uh-oh, hello, uh-oh, right? The fear that the good won't work now. Now, see, this is why people, if you've raised in the church as I was, you heard this many, many, many times, right? The idea that God may not come when you want him, but he's always on time. That is an affirmation of a belief in delay. That is an affirmation of a belief that the good won't work now, right? So we think the good lets evil run on so long, and multitudes of good people pass away before their good deeds are respected, and ages go on before their character is believed in. And so here's something that we have to accept about ourselves individually, and then we can clearly see on the collective space that humanity has a belief in this idea that the good won't work now. I've been thinking about this a lot, and it came back up again as I was watching the homegoing celebrations for Reverend Jesse Jackson over this past weekend. We shall overcome someday. Now, my ancestors have been singing that song, and it is a powerful song. It's a song that generated hope and galvanized the people in the 60s. And it was out of that I am the beneficiary of a life that is beyond what my great-grandparents could imagine, right? And a life that's it's beyond what my grandparents, although my grandparents had wonderful lives, beyond definitely what they thought was possible for themselves or could even dream possible when they were born, right? They were born as second-class citizens in the United States. But understanding affirmations, understanding what is being affirmed, we shall overcome someday, but over and over, it's just an affirming of someday, 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 someday. And so then it also, unfortunately, is declaring that, as she writes here, that evil will run on so long, and multitudes of good people will pass away before their good deeds are respected, before there is the beloved community, right? Before we get to the mountaintop that Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, right? And ages go on before their character is believed, and ages go on before that good, that overcoming that we've been singing about actually truly, truly, truly shows up. And so there's a someday consciousness that actually needs to be let go of, right? Maybe it's "We Have Overcome" is the new song, right? I'm not here to rewrite the song, right? But I recognize that there's a new consciousness that needs to be articulated to get us out of a someday consciousness, a one-day consciousness. It's also rooted in that powerful statement, and I preached something on it some years ago. The arc of the moral universe is long, and it bends towards justice. Right? Well, again, that idea of it being long then means that things will take long. The arc of the moral universe being long means that evil can prevail for a long time. Right? And so it's important that while I recognize that statement is a statement that can instill hope, and that's really the sermon that I preached. That's what that was about. That was in the Gospel of Awesome series. It was rooted in that idea of recognizing what was happening at the time that those words were written and spoken, and how that time in United States history was terrible. Right? It wasn't actually any better than now, right? There were massacres and so many terrible things that happened at that time. And yet there was access to this idea of hope. And hope is wonderful. Hope is the seed of faith. Hope is not faith, though. Right? So yes, we need a seed. The seed needs to be planted. That's hope. But eventually, that seed must be planted, that seed must be nurtured so that it can grow and become the strong tree that is faith. And it is the tree of faith that has roots. It is the tree of faith that then does not fear the wind, as the African proverb teaches us, right? So we recognize then that in order to be able to choose heaven, we have to have a new relationship with time. She goes on, she says, you will see how we all have a sneaking feeling that we would like to know what good it will do us if our wrongs are not set right now. Come, face this adversary right up. Its name is belief in time, belief that it takes time for God to work. No, you say, I don't mean that I think God needs to take time, but that God does take it. And that's a belief, right? That's a belief that, and that's also ascribing human ways of being to something that is not human, right? This is the adversary then, belief that God always takes a long time to work out our cause, whatever your cause is, right? There's a belief in time. I shared this in the Miracle Minded series, and I'll reshare the sermon again because in this moment I don't remember which sermon it was. The only physical limitation in this time-space reality in terms of speed is the speed of light. So if there is a limit around time or how quickly things need to happen, things can't happen any faster than the speed of light. That's the limitation, if you want to even call it that, right? Right? Because that's like millions of miles per second or per minute, right? So we recognize that if that's the truth, that means that things can and do happen at the speed of light. So why not those things that you desire? Why not those things that you are believing? Right? She goes on, did you ever see people who, when they were in great trouble, never touched it with their thoughts, but touched only the God side? Did you ever see anybody who faced up that little sneaking fear that it would take a long time to set their affairs straight and took the fear by the throat, saying, I am not going to believe that the Almighty needs an instant of time as I reckon time to bring forth right conditions here and now? Somebody needs to hear this, and I will still share it. As I promised on Sunday, I will share a list because there's so many of these small nugget treatments here in this chapter, and I compiled them all so that you can use them and turn to them when you realize that you need to choose heaven, or when you want to choose heaven and you need something to support you in doing that. You need something to support you in grabbing fear by the throat and speaking that everlasting no. I am not going to believe that the Almighty, that God, that source, whatever name for the divine you choose to use, needs an instant of time. I'm not going to believe that. Time as I reckon it, time as we experience and use it as human beings. I'm not going to believe that the Almighty needs an instant of time to bring forth right conditions here and now. This is why we are always using in New Thought, in our language and in our prayers and in our affirmations, now, here, right now, right? Because now is where everything takes place. It's now and 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 now. There is no past, there's only now. That which we call the past is really a past now. You must know by this time, that is what she calls the Jesus Christ doctrine. This is the science of spirit, the truth, that by a person's word, they are justified and condemned. So here's the other piece, right? If you believe in the power of your word, the power of death and life is in the tongue. If you believe in the power of your thought and your word, as one thinks in her heart, so she is. You recognize that The truth teaching is that by our word we are justified or condemned. And condemned doesn't mean punished or shamed or cast aside. It means that by our word we will experience the good of our word, or our word will condemn us. Many times our word becomes our own limitation because of what we spoke. Right? I'm condemned when I believe that it takes time for the divine to operate. My word condemns me in my situation. Do you hear that? This is why Ernest Holmes writes in The Science of Mind that this truth, these teachings, this science, the law will become your taskmaster or your servant. One or the other, based on your choosing. Right? Based on your conscious or unconscious choosing. Unconscious until you become aware. And as you become aware, you expand that awareness, that freedom, and the realization of the choice that you have. And then, of course, by your word, you will always be justified. What can I expect but time if I believe in time? What can I expect but fear if I believe in fear? What can I expect but hatefulness if I say hatefulness is good? All these things are my own imagination. That's where it comes from. It exists first in mind, and then it outpictures in the world. Looking toward the heavenly city, I talk of the desert. Lo, looking toward the joyous peace of God's presence, I talk of trouble. So what she's saying here, and I love the language that she uses, right? It's that you put the focus of your attention, you're choosing heaven, you're putting the focus of your attention, you're choosing peace, and then you speak about the unwanted thing. But then that's where you use the formula that I gave you on Sunday, right? You speak all that the Spirit does not believe and what the Spirit does believe. And I'm gonna leave it there because she goes into some other stuff there. But this is a powerful, powerful, powerful awareness, right? Of what is being talked about here and what you are being invited to express and experience, to grab fear by the throat and declare, I do not believe that the divine needs time or take time as we humans do. I do not believe a word of it. I do not accept it. I believe that God is and is now, here and now. I believe that all the things of God are instant. I let it be right here and right now. I let it be in my mind, and it is so. I am justified by my word. And so by my word, I declare that this is as it is, what it is. Now I see there's a question, and I might end on this, right? Intellectually, I understand there is no death. How do you reconcile that when someone close to you? Okay, so let me put this on the screen just to make sure everybody can see it. How do you reconcile when someone close to you has died? So this is something that one requires us to step back a minute, right? Because this cannot be understood intellectually, right? So I think first, it's all good, right? Just do not try to understand this intellectually or accept it intellectually, because it's not an intellectual thing. There is an experience. There's an experience on the human level, in our human experience, of not death, but transition. And that word is not a, kind of a, nice woo-woo word that, those of us in spiritual circles use. And, it's making, death feel a little better, right? It is the literal truth of what happens. So again, not on an intellectual level, but on a spiritual level, first, there must be a firm grasp on the truth that each and every one of us are spiritual beings having a human experience. And when we say we are spiritual beings having a human experience, each and every one of us are non-physical beings having a human experience. I love to call our bodies soul clothing. I also like to think about our bodies in the same way that an astronaut, when they go to space, right, and go to another planet, you have to have on your space suit in order to walk on the moon, in order to walk on any planet, or just to be even in space, right, to spacewalk. There's a recognition that there's something else different that needs to be worn in order to be in that time-space reality. So it is true for each and every one of us as we incarnate into this physical plane, that what our bodies are like spacesuits, right? What our bodies are, it's soul clothing. And it is a temporary vehicle that we use to live and interact and experience life, right? So the first thing, if one is able to embrace that and understand that on an internal, not intellectual level, right? And the way, as I always say, to really know that is to know that for yourself. So this is how and why meditation is so profound and necessary for all of us. Because in meditation, what we are doing is using many different techniques, right? You can choose the one that works best for you. The goal of meditation is not to silence thoughts, not to quiet the mind, right? The goal of meditation is to actually reconnect with the transcendent, eternal part of ourselves. And one of the things that happens early in that experience of practicing meditation over some time is you start to realize that you are not your thoughts, that you are the observer of your thoughts. And this is something now that neuroscience is teaching and confirming, right? It's ancient knowledge, but it's wonderful to have that corroboration. So we are not the thinker of thoughts. We are the receiver of these thoughts. And we are the observer, and we have the ability to choose a thought or not. And it's through meditation that we really learn to experience that and see that. And so then you really do see and know yourself to be not this body. And you really begin to see and know that who you are existed before the body and after the body, right? If we want to use the Bible, right? Well, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you, right? Before I was formed in my mother's womb, you knew me. That's Bible, right? In the First Testament, which suggests that we existed before we incarnated in the human form, right? And so then that energy that inhabits a human form, if it existed before, it exists after, right? It just leaves the body, right? Going back to where it came from. So the reconciliation is the idea that what the statement "there is no death" is saying, as it relates to us as human beings, is that we existed before we incarnated. We exist after we incarnate. Therefore, death is not real, because death suggests a beginning, middle, and end, and that being is final. That body is final. Everything in this physical plane has a life. It's born. It has a life and activity. It decays and then withers away. That's part of what this temporary experience is, right? The greatest and most expensive car in 1980 looks like a piece of junk in 2026, right? So on the physical plane, yes, things have a birth, a life, an activity, they reach a height, and then it decays. So that's what happens to these bodies. But a loved one is not the body. Now, how can you know and appreciate that that's true right now? Close your eyes. Are you able to think of that loved one? Can you see that loved one in your mind's eye? Can you hear their voice with your mind's ears? Can you see the look of love in their eyes looking towards you? Can you feel or remember their embrace? Can you sense or remember their smell? Right here and now in this moment, they are alive in you. If your loved one, think about my sister. My sister's lives in Panama City. I'm in Barbados. I can't touch her, right? Her physical being, I can't put my hands on, and yet I know she is. She is. As soon as I think of her, she is. And her physical presence does not verify. I don't need that to verify that. You see what I'm saying? And so eventually she will release her physical body, and she still will be. Every time I think of her, she is fully alive and in the space and in the room, just as she is right now. As I'm thinking of her, I'm seeing her smile, I'm hearing her voice, I'm feeling her presence, because her presence is eternal. And so again, to kind of wrap up that my answer, there's an opportunity, and this is why I always say when I'm preaching funerals, eulogies, or just working with folks, counseling folks, one of the most important things that's necessary as we talk about the transition of a loved one, the other reason why that word is so important and critical is that it requires each and every one of us who are still on this physical plane to also transition. We have to and get to transition into a new experience of them, because we can no longer, it's I don't know. I almost want to say it's kind of like almost, we take it for granted, right? Someone's physical being, and a lot of times we can know someone through their physical being and still not know them, right? And so we get to transition from that physical experience to really knowing them. And now knowing them, they are free from the limitation of the human experience and all that comes with it. There's a sermon series we did years ago, Life After Life. And in that sermon series, I believe it was the very first sermon in that series. That's what I was talking a lot about in that sermon, right? Is the recognition, and I can post that in the CSC Live group because I think that'll be helpful. That'll be a helpful one for you to watch in this context with this question. There's an opportunity. Our loved ones want us to fully experience them now in this new experience. And that requires a shift and change of us. Doesn't mean that that's immediate, right? You have to go through your stages of grief. I remember when my grandmother passed, my grandma Alice, that was my first grandparent that passed. I used to say, I don't know when I'm going to stop being sad. I stopped writing music. I couldn't hear music. I couldn't hear melody. I was just sad, right? And we experienced another death months later. My uncle, my dad's oldest brother, died suddenly and unexpectedly. And so it was this I was in this I felt like I was just in a daze, because it was like all of the same people that were just at this one funeral, a month ago, we're all at another funeral. That was a rough period for me, right? But I did move through the stages of grief. And the powerful and profound thing is the relationship that I have with my grandmother now, right? The ways in which Grandma Alice shows up and winks, and I feel her presence with me in so many moments. She's realer to me and more alive to me in some ways than she ever was in life. And she was like an awesome grandma, right? She was also, we lived closest to her. So I spent a lot of time with her, learned so many things from her. I talk to her all the time. Sometimes she shows up in dreams. And there's a beautiful opportunity for you to transition into that new relationship. And it is out of that experience, not intellectually, right? It is out of that experience that you will know there is no death, because you're still in relationship with this being whose body has been released, right? But they are very much alive. I see there's another question, so I'll answer. I'll look at this one, and we'll answer that before we close. And again, I think that Sermon from the Life After Life series, I think it was called A Message from the Ancestors, will be a good one. So the question: if we are learning and practicing to be more conscious with our words, to what degree are we limited, condemned by past words we have spoken from a place of unconsciousness? And then the second part: and what can we do when we catch ourselves? How can we check ourselves and re-speak it? Right. So to the first part, right? To what extent are we condemned by our past words? So anything that we spoke unconsciously, it's playing out in various ways, right? Until we become aware. Right? Again, as I talked about on Sunday, that's what awareness is all about, right? And so we forgive ourselves and we set ourselves free. I think that's the first part, right? Is not condemning yourself, right? I forgive myself and I set myself free for all of the ways that I thought or spoke that were against myself unknowingly and out of ignorance, right? All is well, right? So that's important. And because it is just, unfortunately, it's inevitable, right? To what degree are we limited or condemned, right? Those things will play out. They do play out, right? But we become aware. And the beautiful thing is we can replace any and all of those things, right? We can replace any and all those things. So the second part, and what can we do when we catch ourselves? So there's a couple things. First is to use that formula, right, of declaring what the Spirit does not believe and what the Spirit believes. Recognizing that the Spirit is in you, through you, and as you. And so if, say, for instance, as we were talking about the idea of time, that you recognize that you have been using your words to create delay, and you use your words to condemn yourself into something taking time, right? Well, then you affirm, you as let me put that back up. As we had here on this idea of taking fear by the throat, right? I am not going to believe that the Almighty needs any instant of time, right? An instant of time. Or you could just say, the Spirit does not believe in time, nor does it need an instant of time, right? I am bringing forth right conditions right here and right now, right? And so again, I will post in the CSC Live group, I'll post, because there's a whole host of different treatments, just single sentences, right? Or a few sentences that you can use that I think is very helpful. The other thing is any word of truth is a way to re-speak or check yourself, right? So when you become aware, right, coming back to any of these affirmations, right, because that's why they're universal. They work according to any and everything, right? So maybe it's just remembering, I am spirit, I am mind, I am wisdom, I am truth, I am wholeness, right? Maybe it's remembering In God, I live, move, and have my being, right? My good is my God, right? And God is life, truth, substance, and intelligence. And I live in that, right? God is no time. God is no delay. That's where I live. That's where I move. That's where I have my being. Just bringing yourself back to that. If it is helpful. One of the affirmations I gave in an earlier sermon in this series from a Course in Miracles, right? I loose the world of all I thought it was, right? And I go free. You can add, right? Which I love to add that, right? I loose the world of all I thought it was. It's like, okay, yeah, I had those thoughts. That was a reality that I created. I loose the world, and to piggyback from Emma Curtis Hopkins, I loose the world and myself of all I thought it was. My mind holds only what I think with God. And I was sitting with that second statement the other day, because it was reminding me of something. As a kid, I went to a museum or some exhibit where they kind of had this. They wanted us to see and experience what it's like to pan for gold, but it was like a setup where there was gold and in there, but we had to find it. And so they gave us that thing that you shake, and the sediment falls through, and then if there's gold, the gold will be left, right? And so everybody didn't find gold, but you could find gold. And so that's what you're doing when you affirm, my mind holds only what I think with God. By saying that statement, it's like you're shaking this mesh strainer, right? And allowing all the unwanted to move through it, right? Because you want what's left on top, because what's left on top is the gold. I was also reminded of when I was in the 5th grade, I wanted to be an archaeologist. And so I was very fascinated by all of the things that they do in archaeology. Well, they do the same thing, right? When they're at a dig site and they've determined that there's wonderful things here. There's a city here, or there's dinosaurs here. Every they mark out the whole place in grids, right? And somebody is taking that dirt and shaking it, right? Because the sediment falls through, but what's left could be bone. What's left could be a piece of pottery. What's left could be a piece of jewelry, right? And that's what they want. And so when you affirm, my mind holds only what I think with God, it's the equivalent of doing that. And I think that's one of the easiest things to do. I loose the world and myself of all I thought it was. I go free. My mind holds only what I think with God. And then use one of your other affirmations, right? Or declare what the Spirit does not believe and what it believes, right? Come to the list that I share. Keep that list close by, because that list is a good way to kind of just jumpstart you. And then you'll affirm what feels good to you, right? Because you want those words to feel like your own. You want to make them your own. Last thing I'll say before we close. Emma Curtis Hopkins gives an analogy that I think is helpful here as well, right? Because when we become aware that we unconsciously created limitations and we unconsciously created condemnation that we would not have intentionally chosen, and yet that has been the outcome of our life, and it's the experience that we're in now. And we begin to reverse, we begin to change, right? It is possible for instant change. And some of that has to do with the level of belief around a particular topic. Some of that has to do with even the thoughts or beliefs that created the experience and how deeply entrenched they were or were not. But what she uses the analogy, she says, if, there was wind and rain and mud and dirt just pummeling the windows of your home, just day in and day out and day in and day out, right? The whole side of your house, it would be dirty. You wouldn't be able to see through the windows. Once that wind and rain and dirt stopped, okay, good, right? So now you're not being inundated, but now the windows and the home have to be cleaned, right? And that takes the time that it takes, right? It's not that it can appear to be instant, right? But it actually took some time. And other times it may take the time that it takes in this human experience. But there needs to be a recognition that as you're changing the consciousness, thinking of it in that way, like, okay, right, there was this experience of wind and rain and dirt and mud, and now I've stopped that experience. But now I must restore the home and the window, right, to what it is and what it was, what it always was. And so then that's what you're doing when you start to shift. That's what you're doing then when you start to re-speak. And it's important to know that so that you don't lose sight and lose courage, right? I think sometimes folks come to these teachings and have a lot of unrealistic expectations, right? Which is really rooted in fear and a lot of other things. And so if it doesn't work immediately, if something doesn't shift immediately, they're like, oh, I give up. Another thing that happens is sometimes some people, the wind and the rain and the dirt stop. They start cleaning a little bit and it's like, well, I can see better than I did before. So they're like, they think that's good. Or the wind and the rain starts again, after a little cleaning. Well, I was just say the wind and the rain stopping. Sometimes that just feels like relief. And it's like, but no, you still can't see through the window. The side of your house is dirty, right? And so I encourage you to also just consider that and remember that as you move through your process. And so I'm excited, of course, about this series as we continue. I'm excited about where we're going on Sunday with the next lesson. I encourage you to rewatch this, share it with others. I also encourage you to rewatch and revisit the sermons in this series, because the more that you listen to it, you'll hear something that you didn't hear before. You'll hear it in a different way. It'll land in a new way or a different way. And I see the thank yous. I'm so happy that this spoke to your questions and answered your questions. If you're not in the CSC Live group, I encourage you to download the Church Center app and join the group, because we can continue this conversation. You can ask more questions. Also, the things that I've said I would share, I will share there. And particularly, again, that Life After Life series and that first sermon, A Message from the Ancestors, is a necessary one related to this understanding that there is no death, right? There is decay in the physical, but that which manifested in the physical first and always exists in the non-physical. And that's why there is no death. Love and appreciate y'all. Thank you for hanging out. And I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Remember, it's God Talk Sunday. So make a plan to be there with us for the God Talk following the weekend service at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. Love and appreciate y'all. Bye for now.